Okay, so we're going to be making a cutting board similar to this one here. Okay, so how we're going to start that is you're going to first pick out a pattern that you like. Okay, I have a couple different patterns here. I have even more for you to choose from. Probably the easiest one to pick is just the regular cutting board pattern. They range from easy to hard. You can still get full credit for doing, the easiest pattern. It's just your personal preference and how much you want to challenge yourself. So what you're going to do is you're going to come over to the back table. You're going to see tons of wood piled up over here, and we're going to pick out as much wood as you think you need to cover your entire pattern. Okay, so you're going to lay down your pattern, or maybe just grab a couple pieces and bring them to the back and start laying down pieces. You want to try to avoid really long pieces, on short areas like this. Okay, save these longer pieces for people with the bigger projects. Okay. And then you're just going to keep laying them down. Be careful of broken knots. Some of them might have rough edges. Some of them, you might not want a knot like this. Okay, some knots are okay. A knot like this, totally fine. You don't see the dark rings. Where a knot like this, okay, that over time you can see that might eventually loosen up and fall out. That's probably the biggest thing to worry about. Maybe even like a rough edge, like something like this. Okay, be careful about. That might cause some problems in the future. I have my pieces kind of already picked out. It's okay if they're different heights. We'll level that off in the next couple steps here. So I have my project picked out. I'm just gonna go through. I'm gonna draw just a straight line across my pieces, and I'm gonna write 1 AW, 2 AW, AW being your initials, so put your initials, I'm putting mine, 3 AW, 4 AW, 5 AW. We're putting this on here because if you don't have time to glue your project up today, you'll know exactly the order that you set them up in, and we'll know whose project pieces are whose. Okay, all these project pieces are going to look pretty similar, especially the people in the class. You're not going to be able to know your whose project pieces are whose. Again, I label them in order because if I accidentally put them in the wrong order, like this, okay, you can see it's not going to fit properly. Okay. These pieces will all squeeze together a little bit, so if you see some tiny gaps in between your pieces, when we put them in the clamps to glue them up, they are going to squeeze together and the glue will fill in those gaps a little bit. But if you see really big gaps from maybe some like crook pieces, we'll have to either flatten that off. Maybe you can even, if this piece was really bad on this side, just flip it over so it's on the outside edge. Or we can cut it down or hand plane it or something like that. All right, the next step here is to get a couple clamps. And I would space them about, every other slot here. You can fit 4 people on the table at one time. If one person goes this way, the next person, they can put their clamps this way, and then back and forth. You usually get about 4 people on here at a time. If you have a really big project, you might need to space yourself out 2 slots so you get nice even pressure across your whole project. The back of this clamp, you want to put up against the table. You're going to grab your project, put it in here, back out the clamps all the way. The reason I ask you to back out your clamps is if you try to put it in the project and then you go to, you put your project in here and you go to clamp it down, you only have a little bit of room here to tighten your project in the clamps. So you want a lot of room to really get a lot of pressure on your project here. So I'm going to line my project up to what I had it. I'm gonna move these backstops in. They just slide forward. If you want to push them back, you'll notice they don't go back. You have to squeeze this lever to slide them back. I'm gonna make sure these are nice and level across. And then I'm just going to glue my pieces on here. So I'm gonna put a bead of glue on here. For this project, it's okay to go a little heavy. Most projects you don't want to over glue. Okay, for this project, it is okay. I'd rather you go a little heavy than too light. Okay, so I'm going to do first. And then I just take that excess glue on my finger, just wipe it right on the corner. I'm gonna put even pressure on both sides before I give it the final squeeze. So you can see it kind of popped up just a little bit. You wanna make sure you push everything down. Put a little bit more pressure. Push down and get that final pressure on there. Nice and tight. I let my project glue overnight. Okay. Normally this only takes about an hour, but I let it dry a little bit longer. Okay. You'll notice you have some dark marks here. This is just where the iron has a reaction with the glue. It's totally normal. Don't worry about it. Okay, you can see we have this big lump that we're gonna have to plane down before we put it through the machine. Okay, the machine isn't gonna like it when things are really uneven. That's totally fine. We're gonna use a hand plane here in just a second to flatten it off. First, what we're gonna do though is we're gonna get some of this glue off, as much of that glue off as we can. This side looks pretty good. I don't have to scrape any of that glue off. This side has a lot of glue that was dripping. So I'm gonna take my bench stop, I'm gonna put it in my bench, tighten my vise here, I'm gonna lift up my vise stop, just lock it in there. Okay, it's pretty firm. You're gonna use safety glasses for this step because you are gonna have stuff flying out, little chunks of glue. I got my hand scraper here. You're gonna pull towards yourself. That's gonna be easier. It's gonna make a really awful sound here. Okay. So now that I got all the glue off, I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna lower this vise stop because I don't want it sticking up. When I use my hand plane, I might bump into it. So I'm gonna lower it down, I'm gonna lock it in there. And what I'm going for is I want everything to be nice and level, or as close as we can get it. So right now I can see if I kind of drag my hand plane over it, obviously this part is the highest. So I'm gonna work on that first. Sometimes it's easier to work on a little bit of an angle. Right. I got that side pretty close. I might want to go a little bit more on it. We'll kind of see. I'm going to do a little bit on this side. It kind of dips. So I want to hand plane this edge and that edge. Okay, I got it pretty close. There's not, if you can see. Okay. Looks pretty good. I don't see a lot of light coming through this side. This side's the same thing. Okay, got a little bit of light coming through right here. The surface planer will fix that. We'll go over to the surface planer next and smooth all that out. All right, so this is the surface planer. What it's gonna do is, just like we use the hand planer to smooth the edges, we'll use the surface planer to smooth the face, and it'll do it all at once. So, a couple of rules that we need to go over when we're using the surface planer. A lot of these rules will apply to all of the machines in the shop. I'm always going to have safety glasses on whenever using any of the machines. I'm always going to keep my hands 6 inches away from any of the blades, so I don't want my hands ever to go underneath something where I don't see my hands. Okay. I only want one person in the yellow box. You can see there's some yellow boxes drawn around the machines. One person in those boxes. To set up the surface planer, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the thickness of my board. I'm at 3/4. So I'm going to set the surface planer up to 3/4. There's a little ruler on here, and I have a hand wheel right there. Okay, so the top of this little metal piece tells me in between the surface planer is 3/4. It will come out of the back side at 3/4 of an inch. Now it's already at 3/4 of an inch, so it shouldn't do too much, but it'll take down any kind of indiscrepancies if it's uneven. We have hearing protection because it's going to get loud. If you want hearing protection, you can. When you push it in, you're just going to push it in nice and slow. You shouldn't have to shove it into the machine. If you have to shove it in the machine, something's set up wrong, turn the machine off, either figure it out or I'll come over and I'll help you out. Our vents should be running right now, so you're going to see a bunch of sawdust kick out. I'm doing that for the purposes of demo. Normally, the sawdust should not be shooting out of the machine. You're going to turn it over and do half a turn clockwise. Turn it over, half a turn. Half a turn it over. So you're going to continue doing that until it feels like one piece of wood. So if I close my eyes, I shouldn't be able to feel the ups and downs of the different types of wood.